The chandelier above the dining table cast fractured light across bone china and crystal, turning the room into something from a fairy tale. If fairy tales included armed men at every door, and a silence so heavy it pressed against your eardrums like water pressure, Diana stood in the doorway of the Rossetti Estate's formal dining room, her catering uniform suddenly too tight across her chest, watching 30 of New York's most dangerous people pretend to be a family celebrating Christmas. She'd taken the job 3 hours ago out of pure desperation. The catering company called at noon, frantic. Their server for the Rossetti Christmas dinner had quit that morning. Too terrified to set foot on the estate, they offered Diana triple pay, plus a bonus if she'd fill in. She said yes before asking questions, before understanding what the Rossetti name actually meant, before realizing that serving Christmas dinner to a Mafia family was the kind of decision that could reshape your entire life. Now she stood frozen, a silver platter of antipasti balanced in her hands, as the man at the head of the table slowly shifted his attention from his assembled guests to her. Silvio Rossetti. Even Diana, who avoided the news and skipped true crime podcasts, knew that name. He'd inherited his father's organization 5 years ago and spent that time consolidating power with ruthless efficiency, the kind that made headlines. The tabloids called him the Winter King, for his cold calculation, for the way nothing seemed to touch him, for ruling his empire with ice in his veins. But looking at him now, Diana thought the nickname missed something. Yes, he was cold. His dark eyes assessed her with detached interest, like someone cataloging a new acquisition. Yes, he was controlled, relaxed but ready, a predator pretending to sleep. But there was heat beneath that frozen exterior, something dangerous, something that flickered in his eyes when his gaze met hers. "You're new," he said, not a question. Diana swallowed. Around the table, conversation died instantly, 30 pairs of eyes fixed on her, waiting to see how she'd respond to Silvio Rossetti's attention. She recognized the test. Respond wrong and she'd be dismissed. Possibly worse. Respond right. And maybe she'd finish the night and escape back to her normal life. "Yes, sir," she said. "I'm filling in for the regular server." Her voice was steadier than she felt, which felt like a small victory. "I apologize for any disruption. What's your name?" "Diana, sir, Diana Martinez." He studied her for a long, stretched moment, taffy slow. Then he gestured to the empty chair immediately to his right. "Sit with me." The room went completely silent. A fork clinked against a plate, the sound absurdly loud. Diana felt every eye shift from Silvio. To her, felt the weight of their shock, their curiosity, and, in some cases, open hostility. I'm working, Mr. Rossetti. I should serve." "I didn't ask what you should do." His voice remained level, almost pleasant, but authority threaded through every syllable. "I told you what I want you to do. Sit with me." Diana's mind raced. This was insane. She was the help, meant to be invisible, certainly not meant to sit at the family table during Christmas dinner. But she'd heard enough about Silvio Rossetti to know that refusing him wasn't really an option. Men who refused Silvio Rossetti tended to disappear, and she had no illusions that being a woman would protect her. She set the antipasti platter on the sideboard with trembling hands, then crossed to the chair he'd indicated. The man who'd been sitting next to it, broad-shouldered with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, moved down one seat without being asked, his expression carefully neutral. Diana sat. The chair was antique, probably worth more than her car, and the cushion still held warmth from whoever had occupied it before. From this angle, she could see the entire table, the family members and associates trying not to stare, the women in designer dresses shooting her looks that ranged from curious to murderous, the tension crackling through the air like static electricity. Silvio turned slightly toward her, and she caught his scent. Sandalwood and something darker, more complex. "Tell me, Diana Martinez, what brings you to my home on Christmas Day?" "Money." The honest answer slipped out before she could filter it. Around the table, someone made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. "I needed the work." Honest. He said it, surprised by her. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir." "And yet you came anyway. Either you're very brave or very desperate." He reached for his wineglass, his movements precise and controlled. "Which is it?" Diana met his eyes directly. If she was going to survive this night, she couldn't show weakness. Both, probably. I have bills to pay and a grandmother who needs medication. The catering company offered me a triple rate, so here I am. Here you are, he echoed. Then, to her complete shock, he smiled. It was slight, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. I appreciate honesty, Diana. It's rare in my world. He gestured to the server who'd been hovering nervously near the kitchen door. The young man hurried forward with a plate, setting it in front of Diana with shaking hands. Roasted lamb, garlic potatoes, and vegetables that probably cost more per ounce than she made per hour. Another server poured her wine, filling her glass with something that gleamed dark red in the candlelight. Eat, Silvio said. It wasn't quite an order, but it wasn't a suggestion either. Mr. Rossetti, I really shouldn't. You're at my table during my family's Christmas dinner. You'll eat. He picked up his own fork. Unless you're refusing my hospitality. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Diana picked up her fork, her hand steadier than she expected, and took a small bite of lamb. It dissolved on her tongue, perfectly seasoned, probably prepared by a chef who'd trained in Italy. Around the table, conversation slowly resumed. Quiet murmurs, careful laughter, the clink of silverware against china. But Diana felt Silvio's attention on her like a physical touch, even when he turned to speak with the man on his left. She was hyper-aware of him, the way he moved with such controlled grace, the deep timbre of his voice when he spoke, the power that radiated from him like heat from a fire. So Diana. The voice came from across the table, a woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds, with eyes like chips of ice. How does a caterer end up sitting at the head table? It's quite irregular. The question was polite, but the subtext was clear. Who do you think you are? Diana swallowed her food and met the woman's gaze. I have no idea, ma'am. I'm as surprised as you are. My Aunt Isabella, Silvio said, his tone mild. She's curious about everything. Aren't you, Zia? Isabella's smile was sharp as glass. I simply wonder about Mr. Rossetti's choices, especially given the season. Christmas is for family, after all. And I've chosen to extend our family circle tonight. Silvio's voice remained pleasant, but Diana heard steel underneath. I hope that's not a problem, Isabella. Of course not, nephew. Your home, your rules. But her eyes, when they returned to Diana, promised this conversation wasn't over. The dinner continued, course after elaborate course. Diana ate mechanically, too aware of her surroundings to actually taste anything. She was introduced to various family members, cousins, associates, and the underbosses who ran different aspects of Silvio's operation. They all treated her with careful politeness, but she could see the questions in their eyes, the confusion about why their boss had elevated a random caterer to his right hand. She wondered the same thing. As dessert was being served, something involving chocolate and gold leaf that looked more like art than food, Silvio leaned close enough that only she could hear him. You're handling this well. I don't have much choice, she whispered back. You always have a choice. You could panic. You could make a scene. You could demand to leave. His dark eyes studied her. But you're doing none of those things. Why? Because I'm smarter than that. Diana set down her dessert fork. And because I get the sense that if I did any of those things, I'd regret it. You're right. You would. He didn't say it as a threat. He just stated a fact. But that's not the only reason you're still here. What's the other reason? His smile returned, slight and dangerous. You're curious. About me. About this world. About why I singled you out from the moment you walked into this room. He paused. Am I wrong? Diana's heart hammered against her ribs. She should lie. Should deny it. Should maintain some professional distance. But he'd asked for honesty, and something told her that lying to Silvio Rossetti was far more dangerous than telling the truth. No, she admitted quietly. You're not wrong. Good. He stood, and the entire room fell silent again, everyone watching their boss. Diana will be staying for coffee in the drawing room. The rest of you, enjoy your evening. Merry Christmas. It was a dismissal. The family and associates began standing, murmuring their thanks and Christmas wishes, filtering out of the dining room in small clusters. Diana started to stand, but Silvio's hand on her shoulder kept her seated. "Not you," he said softly. "We need to talk." When the room finally emptied, only 3 people remained: Silvio, Diana, and the scarred man who'd moved seats earlier. He stood near the door like a sentinel, his expression unreadable. Silvio gestured to him. "My head of security, Marco. He'll ensure we're not disturbed." "Should I be worried about that?" Diana asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. "That depends." Silvio sat back down, angling his chair toward her. "I'm going to make you an offer. How you respond will determine whether you should be worried." "What kind of offer?" "The kind that could change your life. The kind that comes with benefits and risks in equal measure." He studied her face. "But first I need to know something. The grandmother you mentioned, the one who needs medication. What's wrong with her?" The question surprised Diana. "She has diabetes. The medication is expensive, and my insurance doesn't cover the full cost. Between that and rent and basic expenses, I'm barely staying afloat." She didn't know why she was telling him this, except that those dark eyes seemed to pull truth from her like a magnet. "Why do you care?" "Because I'm about to offer you a job that will solve all those problems. But I need to know what motivates you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Here's the situation, Diana. My family is powerful, but power comes with complications. Some people want what I have. People who would use any perceived weakness against me. I don't understand what this has to do with me. My Aunt Isabella, the one who questioned your presence, she's been pushing me to get married, to produce heirs, to legitimize my position with a wife from an appropriate family." His jaw tightened, just barely. "She's not alone. Half the people at that table tonight have daughters or nieces. They've been parading in front of me for years." The realization came slowly, and then all at once. "You want me to be your fake girlfriend." "Not girlfriend." He said it calmly, almost casually. "Fiancée," he continued, as if discussing the weather. "For 6 months. You'll move into my home, attend family functions, play the role of the woman who's captured my attention. In return, I'll pay off your grandmother's medical expenses, cover your rent, and provide a salary of $10,000 per month." Diana's mind went blank. $10,000 a month. For 6 months. That was more money than she'd made in the past 2 years combined. That was security, breathing room, the chance to save for the future instead of constantly scrambling to survive. And it was completely insane. "Why me?" she managed. "You could hire an actress, someone trained for this." "Because you're real." His voice didn't waver. "Because you walked into that room terrified, and still held it together. Because when I told you to sit with me, you did it, even though every instinct probably screamed at you to run." He stood and crossed to the window, gazing out at the snow-covered grounds. "My world is full of performances, Diana. Everyone is playing a role. Everyone is manipulating everyone else. But you were honest. You told me you needed money. You admitted you were scared. That's more genuine than anything I've experienced in years." "So," she said quietly, "you want to hire me because I'm a terrible liar?" He turned back to her. This time his smile reached his eyes. "I want to hire you because you're authentic. Because my family will believe I'd be drawn to someone real, after years of fake society princesses. And because I think you're strong enough to survive 6 months in my world, without losing yourself." Diana stood on shaking legs. She'd come here to serve dinner, to make rent money. Now she was being offered more than she'd ever seen, in exchange for pretending to be engaged, to one of the most dangerous men in New York. "What happens after 6 months?" she asked. "We stage a breakup. Amicable, mutual, nobody at fault. You walk away with your money and your freedom. I get 6 months of peace from my family's matchmaking." He stepped closer, stopping just near enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "But I need your answer tonight. Tomorrow the offer expires." "Why the rush?" "Because Christmas is when family expectations are highest. If I show up to New Year's Eve with a fiancé, it sends a message that I'm settling down and thinking about the family's future. It buys me time and space to handle actual business, instead of deflecting marriage proposals. Diana's practical side warred with her survival instincts. The money would change everything. Her grandmother could get the best care. Diana could quit the catering job that barely paid bills, and she could finally breathe without the constant weight of financial stress crushing her chest. But this was the Mafia. These were dangerous people, living dangerous lives. 6 months in Silvio Rossetti's world could expose her to things she couldn't unsee, dangers she couldn't anticipate. I need guarantees, she said. I need to know I'll be safe. That when this ends, I can walk away without looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. You'll be the safest you've ever been while you're with me. He said it with absolute certainty. No one will touch you, threaten you, or even look at you wrong. You'll be under my protection, which in this city means something absolute. He paused. And when it ends, you have my word. You walk away clean. No strings, no obligations, no danger. The word of a mafia boss. The word of a man who keeps his promises. Ask anyone who's worked with me, Diana. I don't lie, and I don't go back on my deals. His expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I'm asking you to take a calculated risk for 6 months of financial security. That's all. She should say no, should walk out of this house and never look back, should choose safety and poverty over danger and security. But Diana had been choosing safety her entire life. And where had it gotten her? Working 3 jobs, drowning in debt, watching her grandmother's health deteriorate because they couldn't afford better care. It may be time to choose differently. Yes, she heard herself say. I'll do it. Silvio's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. Good. Marco will drive you home to collect your things. You'll move in tonight. Tonight? That's necessary. If we're engaged, you live here. That's non-negotiable. He pulled out his phone. Give me your grandmother's information. I'll have her medication costs handled by morning. Diana recited the information in a daze, watching him type with efficient precision. This was really happening. She was really agreeing to fake an engagement with a mafia boss. She was really about to move into his estate and pretend to be someone she wasn't for the next 6 months. One more thing, Silvio said, pocketing his phone. While we're in public, we need to be convincing. That means physical affection, holding hands, my arm around you, occasional kisses. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to sell the relationship. He studied her face. Is that something you can handle? Diana's mouth was dry. The thought of Silvio touching her, kissing her, even for show. It sent heat flooding through her body that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Yes, I can handle it. Then we have a deal. He extended his hand. She took it, his grip warm and firm, and sending electricity up her arm. This handshake was sealing something bigger than a business arrangement, though she couldn't articulate what. It felt like standing on a cliff's edge, about to jump into water so deep she couldn't see the bottom. Welcome to the family, Diana Martinez, Silvio said. Then he pulled her close, his other hand coming up to cup her face, and kissed her. It wasn't a business kiss. It was claiming, possessive, and so thorough that Diana forgot to breathe. His lips moved against hers with confident precision, and she found herself responding without conscious thought, her hands fisting in his shirt, her body pressing against his. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His dark eyes had gone molten, and his thumb traced across her lower lip with aching gentleness. We'll need to practice that, he said, his voice rough, for authenticity. Diana could only nod, her entire body vibrating with sensation. What had she just agreed to? Marco appeared at her elbow, his scarred face carefully neutral. I'll drive you home now, Miss Martinez. Mr. Rossetti has business to attend to. The drive to her apartment in Queens took 40 minutes. Marco didn't speak beyond confirming her address, which gave Diana time to process the seismic shift her life had just taken. She'd walked into that estate as a struggling caterer. She was leaving as the fake fiancée of New York's most powerful crime boss. Her apartment looked even shabbier through Marco's eyes. The peeling paint, the locks that barely worked, the narrow stairs that smelled like mildew. But he waited patiently while she threw clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag, called her grandmother to explain she'd be staying with a new boyfriend for a while, and took one last look at the life she was leaving behind. "Ready?" Marco asked. "No," Diana admitted, "but let's go anyway." The drive back to the estate was silent. When they arrived, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and sharper cheekbones was waiting in the foyer. "Diana Martinez? I'm Lucia, Mr. Rossetti's personal assistant. I'll show you to your room." Room? Diana had assumed she'd be staying in guest quarters, somewhere separate from Silvio's personal space. Lucia's smile was knowing. "Your room, connected to Mr. Rossetti's suite. For appearances, you understand. Of course, if they were supposed to be engaged, they'd share space." Diana followed Lucia through the mansion's winding corridors, trying to memorize the route and failing completely. The estate was enormous, all marble and old money, and the kind of security that wasn't obvious, but was definitely there. Lucia opened a door to reveal a bedroom larger than Diana's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, a king-sized bed dominated one wall, and a door on the far side presumably led to Silvio's room. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Bathroom's through there," Lucia said, pointing. "Closets already stocked with appropriate clothing. Mr. Rossetti had selections sent over based on your size." "How did he know my size?" "Mr. Rossetti is observant." Lucia's expression suggested this wasn't the strangest thing her boss had done. "Breakfast is at 8. Family brunch tomorrow at noon. You'll be expected to attend. Mr. Rossetti will brief you in the morning on what to expect." She paused at the door. "A word of advice? Please don't lie to him. He always knows." Then she was gone, leaving Diana alone in her gilded cage. Diana unpacked mechanically, hanging her shabby clothes in a closet full of designer pieces and setting her toiletries in a bathroom with heated floors and a shower the size of her old bedroom. It felt surreal, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. A soft knock on the connecting door made her jump. "Come in," she called, her voice shakier than she wanted. Silvio entered, having changed from his dinner suit into dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked more relaxed, but no less dangerous, and Diana's body remembered that kiss with unfortunate clarity. "Settling in?" he asked. "Trying to. This is all a lot." "I know." He crossed to the window, maintaining a careful distance. "I wanted to go over some ground rules. Things that will make the next 6 months easier for both of us." Diana sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm listening." "First, your safety is paramount. You don't go anywhere without security, Marco or one of my other people. No exceptions. Second, in public, we're completely committed to each other. Affectionate, attentive, believable. In private, we maintain whatever boundaries you need. This is a business arrangement, and I won't take advantage." He turned to face her. "Third, if at any point you want out, you tell me. We'll figure out an exit strategy that keeps you safe and financially secure. Clear?" "Clear." Diana swallowed hard. "What about your family? Your Aunt Isabella already hates me." "Isabella hates everyone. Don't take it personally." His expression hardened. "But she's also dangerous. She's been positioning her daughter to marry me for years, and your presence threatens those plans. Watch yourself around her." "Is she the only one I need to worry about?" "In my family? No, but she's the most immediate concern." He moved closer, sitting in the chair across from the bed. "Diana, I need you to understand something. The people you met tonight, they're dangerous. They've killed, they've hurt people, they've done things that would terrify you. But as long as you're with me, they can't touch you. My protection is absolute. And when I'm not with you anymore, after the 6 months, then you disappear. New city, new identity if necessary. Enough money to start fresh somewhere my family can't reach you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I told you that you'd walk away clean. I meant it. Diana studied his face, looking for deception and finding only certainty. Why are you being so careful with me? I'm just a caterer you hired to play a role. Because you're a good person in a bad situation. Because you're doing this for your grandmother, not out of greed or ambition. And because... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features before his control snapped back into place. Because I'm tired of being surrounded by people who only see what I can do for them. You see me as a person first, a mob boss second. That's rare. I don't want to ruin it. The honesty in his voice made Diana's chest tight. She'd expected a criminal, a monster, someone who used people without conscience. Instead, she was looking for a man who was complicated and careful, and maybe just as lonely as she was. Get some sleep, Silvio said, standing. Tomorrow's going to be challenging. Family brunch means everyone will be scrutinizing you, asking questions, testing you. I'll prep you in the morning. He moved toward the connecting door, then stopped. Diana, thank you for saying yes, for taking this risk. I know it wasn't easy. Neither is being poor, she replied. So thank you for the opportunity. He smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. Good night, Diana. Good night, Silvio. When the door closed behind him, Diana fell back on the impossibly soft bed and stared at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, she'd been serving drinks at a corporate party, worried about making rent. Now she was lying in a bedroom that cost more than she'd make in a lifetime, engaged to a Mafia boss, about to navigate a world she didn't understand. And the strangest part? She wasn't as terrified as she should be. Silvio had kissed her as she mattered, looked at her like she was worth protecting, and promised her safety in a world built on violence. Maybe it wasn't brilliant, but she believed him. She just hoped that belief wouldn't get her killed. The next morning arrived far too quickly. Diana woke to winter sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and a spike of panic. Before memory rushed back in, the dinner, the offer, the kiss that still made her lips tingle when she thought about it. She showered in the massive bathroom, dried herself with towels softer than anything she'd ever owned, and stood in front of a closet full of clothes that suddenly felt less like gifts and more like a costume. For brunch with the Mafia family, what did you wear? The red dress was too bold. The black felt too funereal. She settled on a cream sweater and dark slacks. Polished, understated, not trying too hard. When she stepped into the hall, the scent of coffee drew her through the connecting door and into Silvio's suite. He sat at a small table by the windows, a tablet in one hand, a coffee cup at his elbow. He'd showered too. His dark hair was still damp, and the charcoal sweater he wore made his eyes look almost black. He glanced up and smiled slowly. Her stomach flipped. Good morning, he said. Coffee? Please. Diana accepted the cup he poured, grateful for something to do with her hands. So, she said, forcing lightness into her voice. Family brunch? Should I be nervous? Probably. He gestured for her to sit. But I'll walk you through it. First, the key players. For the next hour, Silvio briefed her, with the precision of a general preparing for battle. Family relationships, business alliances, old grudges, current politics. Diana's head spun with names and connections, but she absorbed what she could. Mental notes about who to watch and who to trust, which, according to Silvio, was almost no one. What about you? She asked when he paused. If we're supposedly engaged, I should know more than your reputation. He studied her over the rim of his coffee cup. What do you want to know? Everything, she said. Favorite food, childhood memories, what you read, what you love, the things a fiancé would know. Favorite food is my mother's lasagna, he said quietly. She died when I was 12, but I still remember the taste. Childhood memory. There's a vineyard in Tuscany, where I spent summers with my grandfather. He taught me about wine and patience, and the difference between power and respect. He set his cup down. I read history, military strategy, political theory, and then he paused. And what I love, his eyes met hers, suddenly intense. I love the moment, when someone stops performing and shows me who they really are, like you did last night. Diana's breath caught. That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? She hesitated. I don't know. Money, power, control. The things mob bosses are supposed to care about. I have all those things. They're not what keeps me awake at night. He stood and extended his hand. Come on, time to face the family. The brunch was held in a different dining room, smaller, brighter, with windows overlooking a garden buried in snow. The same cast from last night's dinner gathered around the table, plus a few additional faces Diana didn't recognize. Isabella sat near the head of the table, her daughter Francesca beside her, a beautiful woman in her late 20s, who looked at Diana with poorly concealed venom. Silvio kept Diana close, his hand at the small of her back as they entered, a gesture of possession that everyone noted. They sat together, and immediately servers appeared with food, pastries, fruit, eggs prepared a dozen different ways. So, Diana, Isabella said sweetly once everyone had been served. Tell us about yourself, your family, your background. We know so little about the woman who's captured Silvio's heart. It was a trap, designed to expose Diana's working-class roots and make her feel inferior. But Silvio's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, and Diana lifted her chin. My family is from the Bronx originally. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She worked 2 jobs to put me through community college, and now I'm working to take care of her. Diana met Isabella's eyes steadily. We're not wealthy or connected, but we're survivors, and we take care of our own. How admirable, Isabella said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. And how did you meet my nephew? At a charity event, Silvio interjected smoothly, the lie they'd prepared. Diana was serving, and I was bored with the usual crowd. We started talking, and I realized she was the most genuine person I'd met in years. The rest is history. How romantic, Francesca's voice dripped acid. A modern Cinderella story. Francesca, Silvio said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Watch your tone. I'm simply curious about your whirlwind romance, cousin. Surely you can't blame us for being surprised. You've never shown interest in anyone before, and suddenly this caterer appears, and you're engaged? She turned to Diana. It seems awfully convenient. Convenient for whom? Diana asked, proud of how level her voice stayed. I'm not interested in your family's business or money. I'm interested in Silvio. If you can't understand that, maybe it says more about you than about me. The room went silent. Francesca's face flushed red, and several people around the table looked like they couldn't decide whether to laugh or be horrified. But Silvio's hand tightened on hers approvingly. I like her, said a voice from the other end of the table. Diana turned to see an older man with silver hair and sharp eyes smiling at her. She's got spine. About time someone stood up to Francesca's territorial nonsense. Uncle Leo, Silvio said, his tone warming slightly. Diana, this is my father's brother, the only member of my family with any sense. Leo laughed. I'm also the only one who isn't trying to marry you off or manipulate you into something you don't want, which apparently makes me unique. He raised his coffee cup to Diana. Welcome to the family, dear. You're going to need that spine. The rest of brunch passed less tensely, though Diana felt Isabella and Francesca's eyes on her like lasers. When they finally escaped, Silvio guided her to his private office, a wood-paneled room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and the kind of antique desk that probably had history. You did well, he said, pouring them both whiskey despite the early hour. Standing up to Francesca, that was perfect. She respects strength even when she hates you for it. She really does hate me. Diana accepted the glass. I saw it in her eyes. This is more than just disapproving of your choice. Francesca expected to marry me. Isabella's been grooming her for it since we were children. He settled into his desk chair, looking suddenly tired. My father promised Isabella years ago that I'd marry Francesca when I inherited. He broke that promise by dying before I was ready, and I've been refusing to honor it ever since. So I'm not just your fake fiancé, I'm your escape route from an arranged marriage. More or less. He took a slow sip of whiskey. Does that change things? Diana thought about it. It makes it make more sense, actually. The urgency, the timing, the money you're offering. You're not just deflecting family pressure. You're breaking a promise made by your dead father. That's serious. It is. Which is why I needed someone like you. Someone outside our world who can't be easily intimidated or bought off. His dark eyes studied her. Francesca will try to undermine you, Diana. Isabella will look for weaknesses. And others in my organization won't like that I chose an outsider. You need to be prepared for that. What does being prepared look like? It means always having security. It means being careful who you trust. It means... He set down his glass and crossed to where she stood by the bookshelves. It means I'm going to teach you how to navigate this world. Not just survive it. Thrive in it. Because the stronger you appear, the safer you'll be. Diana looked up at him, struck again by how close he stood, by the intensity in his eyes, by the way her body responded to his proximity despite every logical reason to maintain distance. Why do you care? I'm a hired actress in your family drama. You're more than that. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly gentle. I told you last night, you're real. In a world built on lies and performance, you're the most genuine thing I've encountered in years. I'm not going to let my family destroy that. Silvio. Diana didn't know what she wanted to say, only that the air between them had charged with something electric and dangerous. He seemed to feel it too. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin, and his eyes dropped to her lips. I should kiss you again, for practice. Practice? Her voice came out breathless. For when we need to convince people in public. But the heat in his eyes suggested this had nothing to do with their arrangement and everything to do with want. That sounds like an excuse. Maybe it is. He leaned closer, his lips a breath away from hers. Tell me to stop, Diana. She should. This was getting too honest, too fast. But she'd spent her whole life doing what she should. Maybe it was time to do what she wanted. Instead of speaking, she closed the distance and kissed him. This kiss was different from last night. Slower, deeper, less about claiming and more about exploring. Silvio's arms came around her, pulling her against his body, and Diana's hands slid into his hair. He tasted like whiskey and danger, and she couldn't get enough. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Silvio pressed his forehead against hers, his grip on her waist almost desperate. This is a bad idea, he said roughly. Terrible, Diana agreed. Our arrangement is business. Getting emotionally involved complicates everything. I know, but I can't seem to stop wanting you. His eyes met hers, raw and honest. Even though I know I should. Diana's heart hammered. Then don't stop. He kissed her again, and this time there was nothing careful about it. He backed her against the bookshelf, his body pressing against hers, his hands sliding into her hair. Diana forgot about their arrangement, forgot about the danger, forgot about everything except the feeling of Silvio Rossetti kissing her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. A knock on the door made them spring apart. Silvio's expression shifted instantly from passionate to controlled, and Diana marveled at how quickly he could mask his emotions. What? He called, his voice only slightly rough. Marco's voice came through the door. Sorry to interrupt, boss, but we have a situation. Silvio's jaw tightened. I'll be right there. To Diana, he said quietly, Stay here. Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marco. What kind of situation? The kind I handle so you don't have to. He kissed her forehead quickly. I'll be back soon. Promise me you'll stay here. I promise. He left, and Diana locked the door as instructed, then sank into his desk chair with shaking legs. Her lips were swollen, her body humming with sensation, her mind reeling with what had just happened. She'd kissed Silvio Rossetti again, And this time, it had nothing to do with their fake engagement, and everything to do with genuine attraction. She was in so much trouble. An hour passed. Then 2. Diana occupied herself by exploring Silvio's office. The books were mostly history and military strategy, as he'd said. Still, there were also first editions of classic novels, photo albums she didn't dare open, and a framed picture on his desk of a younger Silvio, with an elegant woman who had to be his mother. The resemblance was striking. Same dark eyes, same strong jaw, same intensity even in a photograph. Diana was studying a map of the city marked with various symbols she didn't understand when the door unlocked. She spun around, relaxing only when she saw Silvio enter, though her relief evaporated when she took in his expression. He looked furious in a cold, controlled way that was somehow more frightening than shouting would have been. "What happened?" she asked. "Someone leaked information about you. Your full name, your address, your grandmother's nursing home." He poured himself another whiskey and downed it in one swallow. "It's being circulated in certain circles that don't have our best interests at heart." Ice flooded Diana's veins. "My grandmother, is she safe? I moved her to a private facility an hour ago. Top security, best medical care, completely off the grid. She's safer than she's ever been." He finally looked at Diana, and some of his fury softened. "You're safe too, but we need to accelerate our timeline." "What does that mean?" "It means we're getting engaged. Publicly. Tomorrow night." He set down his glass. "There's a New Year's Eve gala at the plaza. Every major family in the city will be there. We're going to make a statement that you're mine, and anyone who threatens you answers to me." Diana's mind raced. "Who leaked the information?" "We're working on finding out. My guess is Isabella or someone aligned with her. They want to scare you off before this becomes too real." His expression hardened further. "They're about to learn that was a mistake. Silvio, maybe we should reconsider this. If it's putting people in danger." "No." He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. "We're not backing down. That's what they want. For you to run, for me to look weak. I won't give them that satisfaction." His grip gentled slightly. "I told you I'd keep you safe. I meant it. Your grandmother is protected. You're protected. And tomorrow night, I'm going to make it crystal clear what happens to anyone who comes after what's mine." "I'm not really yours," Diana said, but the words felt like a lie even as she spoke them. After those kisses, after the way he looked at her, the lines between fake and real had blurred beyond recognition. "Aren't you?" He studied her face with unnerving intensity. "Because it feels real to me, Diana. Dangerously real. That's the problem. We're supposed to be acting, but this is starting to feel like more than a performance." "I know." He released her and stepped back, running a hand through his hair in the first truly agitated gesture she'd seen from him. "I didn't plan for this. I could keep it business, keep my distance, but you—" He laughed, the sound almost bitter. "You're under my skin, and that's dangerous for both of us." Diana's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. "What do we do?" "We finish what we started. 6 months, as we agreed. And we try very hard not to let this become something that destroys us both." He met her eyes. "Can you do that? Can you stay, knowing it's getting complicated?" She should say no. Should take her grandmother and the money Silvio had already spent, and disappear before things got worse. But looking at him now, this powerful, dangerous man who somehow made her feel safe and seen and wanted in ways she'd never experienced, she couldn't make herself walk away. "Yes," she whispered, "I can stay." Relief flickered across his features. "Then let's prepare for tomorrow. You'll need a dress, jewelry, and the full armor. I'm going to make you look so untouchable that no one will dare question your place in my life." The next 24 hours passed in a whirlwind. Designers arrived with gowns in every shade, finally settling on something dark green that made Diana's skin glow and her eyes look almost luminous. A jeweler brought cases of pieces that probably cost more than houses, and Silvio personally selected emerald earrings and a matching bracelet. A hairstylist and makeup artist transformed her into someone who looked like she belonged in Silvio's world. When Diana finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the struggling caterer. In her place stood someone elegant, poised, untouchable, exactly what Silvio had promised. "Perfect," he said from the doorway. He'd changed into a tuxedo that fit him like it had been painted on, and Diana's mouth went dry looking at him. "You look like a queen." "I feel like an imposter." "Then fake it." He crossed to her and offered his arm. "That's what we're both doing tonight. Faking it so well that no one questions the truth. Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." The Plaza Ballroom was a vision of New Year's Eve excess. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, hundreds of New York's elite in designer gowns and tuxedos. But Diana felt every eye turn to them when they entered, felt the weight of speculation and judgment as Silvio guided her through the crowd, with his hand possessively at her waist. "Smile," he murmured, "like you're exactly where you belong." So Diana smiled. She smiled as Silvio introduced her to business associates, who looked at her as if they were calculating her worth. She smiled while women in diamonds whispered behind their hands. She smiled as Isabella and Francesca watched from across the room, their expressions promising retribution. "You're doing beautifully," Silvio said during a quiet moment on the edge of the dance floor. "Half the room is wondering how I landed you instead of the other way around." "You're a good liar." "I'm not lying." He pulled her onto the dance floor as a waltz began, his hand settling at her waist, the other taking hers with perfect precision. "You're the most stunning woman here, Diana. That's an objective fact, not flattery." As they moved together, Diana felt the room fade. There was only Silvio's body against hers, his dark eyes locked on her face, the strength in his arms as he guided her through the steps. For a moment, she let herself believe this was real, that she was actually engaged to this complicated, dangerous man, that they had a future beyond their 6-month arrangement. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. "That this is the nicest moment I've had in years, even knowing it's all pretend." She met his eyes. "Is that pathetic?" "It's honest." He pulled her infinitesimally closer. "And I don't think it's pretend anymore, do you?" Before Diana could answer, the music ended, and the MC's voice boomed across the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost midnight. Find your loved ones and prepare for the new year." Silvio kept Diana close as the crowd pressed together, everyone grabbing champagne flutes, the energy building toward the countdown. Isabella and Francesca materialized nearby, and Diana saw the calculation in Isabella's eyes, the way she positioned herself for maximum visibility. 10, 9, 8, the crowd chanted. "Whatever happens next," Silvio said in Diana's ear, "trust me." 7, 6, 5. He turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. 4, 3, 2. "This is going to make headlines," he murmured. 1, Happy New Year. And then Silvio kissed her. Not the careful performance kiss from The Office. Not the passionate but private kiss from Christmas night. This was a claiming, a declaration. A kiss that announced to everyone watching that Diana Martinez belonged to Silvio Rossetti, and he wasn't apologizing for it. When he finally pulled back, the room had erupted in noise. Champagne corks popping, people cheering, music swelling. But Diana only saw Silvio's eyes, dark and intense, and absolutely focused on her. "Now they all know," he said. "You're mine, Diana, and I protect what's mine." "Silvio," she started, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "We'll talk later. Right now we celebrate." He grabbed 2 champagne flutes from a passing server and handed her one. "To new beginnings." "To surviving them," Diana countered, and they drank. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People congratulated them. Isabella's fury was palpable but contained, and Francesca disappeared entirely, which Diana suspected was worse than if she'd stayed. By the time they finally made it back to the estate at 3 a.m, Diana's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling. But when Silvio walked her to her door, neither of them moved to say goodnight. "Come in," Diana said impulsively, "just for a minute." He followed her inside, and she kicked off her heels with a groan of relief. Silvio loosened his bow tie, and they stood there in her room, the events of the evening settling between them like snow. "That kiss," Diana started, "at midnight." It was necessary to make a statement, but his eyes said something different. Was it only that? No. He crossed to her slowly. "It was also selfish. Because I've been wanting to kiss you like that since the moment you sat down at my Christmas table and looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster." Diana's breath caught. "I don't think you're a monster. You should. I've done monstrous things." His hand came up to cup her face. "But with you, I remember what it feels like to be human, to want something beyond power and control, to care about someone more than I care about my empire." Silvio. Diana didn't know what to say. This was too much, too honest, too fast. "I know. I'm breaking our rules. I'm making this complicated when it should stay simple." He pressed his forehead against hers. "Tell me to leave, Diana. Tell me this stays business, and I'll walk out that door right now." She should. This was precisely what they'd agreed not to do. Let emotions blur the boundaries of their arrangement. But standing here with him, feeling his warmth and his want and his careful vulnerability, Diana couldn't make herself push him away. "Don't leave," she whispered. "Not tonight." He kissed her answer, soft and searching, giving her time to change her mind. But Diana only pulled him closer, her hands sliding into his hair, her body pressing against his. They stumbled toward the bed, shedding expensive accessories. His cufflinks, her bracelet, his jacket, her earrings, until they collapsed together on the mattress. But Silvio didn't push further. He just held her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his face buried in her hair, like she was the only thing anchoring him to earth. "Stay with me tonight," Diana murmured, "just to sleep." "Are you sure?" "Yes." So they lay there together as dawn crept across the windows, neither sleeping, but both finding comfort in the presence of the other. And Diana realized with crystalline clarity that she'd stopped pretending somewhere along the way. She wasn't acting anymore. She'd fallen completely, irrevocably for Silvio Rossetti, which meant when their 6 months ended, it was going to destroy her. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, she let herself be held by the most dangerous man in New York, and felt safer than she ever had in her life. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Diana attended family functions on Silvio's arm, learning to navigate the layered politics of his world. She spent mornings with Lucia, absorbing the unspoken rules. Which families to cultivate, which to avoid, the subtle signals that meant alliance or threat. Afternoons were often spent with Marco, learning basic self-defense, training Silvio insisted on, after the information leak. And nights were complicated. For appearances, they kept separate rooms, but most evenings Silvio ended up in Diana's bed. Not for anything physical, just holding her, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up inside the organization, about watching his father's ruthlessness and vowing to be different, about the weight that came with power. She told him about her parents' death, about her grandmother's strength, about dreams she'd abandoned, because survival always came first. "When this is over," Silvio asked one night, his fingers tracing slow patterns on her arm, "what will you do? Where will you go?" Diana's heart tightened. She'd been trying not to think about the end. "I don't know," she admitted. "Somewhere far from New York, probably. Start fresh, where no one knows my name." "That sounds lonely." "Safe is better than lonely." "Is it?" He shifted, turning to face her in the darkness. "What if I asked you to stay?" he said softly. "Not as part of our arrangement, but because I don't want you to go." Her breath caught. "Silvio, we agreed." "I know what we agreed," he said. 6 months, business, clean break." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But I'm asking what you want, Diana. Not what's safe, not what's smart, not what fits the plan. What do you actually want?" "I want..." She hesitated, afraid to give the words shape. But his gaze was patient. Open! And she found the courage. I want to stay. I want this to be real. But I'm terrified, Silvio. Your world is dangerous and I'm just the woman who walked into my life. And reminded me what it feels like, to want something beyond power. He kissed her gently. You're not just anything, Diana. You're everything. We should talk about this later, she said quietly. When we're thinking clearly, not in the middle of the night, when everything feels possible, then we'll talk in daylight. He pulled her close once more. But the answer won't change. Please stay, Diana. However we make that work. She fell asleep in his arms, her mind spinning with hope and fear in equal measure. When she woke the next morning, Silvio was already gone. It had become a pattern. He worked before dawn, handling parts of his life he kept carefully, deliberately, separate from hers. But that morning, something was different. Marco appeared at her door before she'd finished dressing, his expression grim. Miss Martinez, please come with me now. Ice flooded her veins. What happened? Is Silvio... Mr. Rossetti is fine, but there's a situation. Please, we need to move quickly. Diana followed Marco through the estate's corridors to Silvio's office. Inside, she found Silvio behind his desk with murder in his eyes, Uncle Leo standing near the window, and on the screen of Silvio's computer, photographs that made Diana's stomach drop. Photos of her, leaving the estate, shopping with Lucia, having coffee with Emma, who'd come to visit. But these weren't paparazzi shots. These were surveillance photos, taken by someone tracking her movements, watching her when she thought she was safe. Who? Diana asked, her voice shaking. We're still confirming, Leo said gently. But we have strong suspicions. Francesca. Silvio's voice was flat, emotionless in the way that promised violence. She's been having you followed, building a file. We're still determining what she plans to do with it. She wants to prove I'm not worthy of you, that I'm a liability. Diana sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. She's going to use these to humiliate me, to make you look foolish for choosing me. She's going to regret ever thinking she could threaten you. Silvio came around the desk and crouched in front of Diana, taking her hands. Listen to me. This changes nothing. You're still under my protection. She can take all the photos she wants. It doesn't change what you are to me. What am I to you, Silvio? Really? Diana needed to hear it, needed to understand what she was fighting for. He glanced at Leo, who took the hint and left the room, closing the door behind him. Then Silvio cupped Diana's face in both hands, his dark eyes burning with intensity. You're the woman I'm falling in love with. The woman who makes me want to be better than I am. The woman I wake up thinking about and fall asleep holding, and can't imagine my life without anymore. He pressed his forehead against hers. This stopped being fake the moment I kissed you, Diana. Maybe even before that. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Tears burned Diana's eyes. I love you too. I've been trying not to, trying to keep it business, but I can't anymore. I love you, Silvio. He kissed her, desperate and claiming, and Diana kissed him back with everything she felt. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. So what do we do? Diana asked. About Francesca? About the photos? About all of this? We end it. Silvio stood, his expression hardening into something ruthless. I'm calling a family meeting, tonight. And I'm going to make very clear what happens to people who threaten what's mine. No more politics, no more games, just truth. That evening, Diana found herself once again at the formal dining table. But this time, every major member of the Rossetti family was present. The tension was thick enough to cut, and Francesca's expression was triumphant. Clearly, she expected tonight to go in her favor. She was wrong. Silvio stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding absolute attention. I called you here tonight to address some family business that's been festering too long. Francesca, would you like to explain why you've been having Diana surveilled? Francesca's confidence flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Silvio's voice dropped to a dangerous level. I have proof. Photos, payment records, everything. You've been building a file on Diana, presumably to use against me. Against us. Why? Because she doesn't belong here. Francesca exploded, her composure shattering. She's nothing. A caterer. A nobody from nowhere. You were supposed to marry me, Silvio. It was arranged. It was decided. It was what your father wanted. My father is dead, and I make my own decisions. Silvio moved to stand behind Diana's chair, his hands on her shoulders. Diana belongs here because I chose her. Because she's brave and honest, and makes me want to be better than the monster this family raised. That makes her more worthy than anyone in this room. You'll regret this, Isabella said coldly. She'll destroy everything you've built. She's a weakness, Silvio. And in our world, weakness gets you killed. Then I'll die weak. He said it simply, without dramatics. Because I'd rather have 6 months with Diana than a lifetime of political marriages and empty alliances. She's not my weakness, she's my strength. Diana's throat tightened with emotion. She stood and turned to face him, not caring that everyone was watching. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Good, because I'm keeping you. He kissed her in front of everyone, claiming her absolutely. When he pulled back, he addressed the table again. Francesca, you're done. I'm removing you from any family business. Isabella, you'll support this, or you'll find yourself in a similar position, and anyone else who has a problem with my choice can leave now. I won't stop you. No one moved. The message was clear. Cross Silvio Rossetti and you lost everything. Several people actually nodded approval, including Uncle Leo, who was openly smiling. Then we're done here, Silvio said. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and welcome to the family, Diana, for real this time. As the room emptied, Francesca pushed past Diana with a look of pure hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, Silvio said quietly, stepping between them. It is. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her wrong again, and I'll show you exactly how ruthless I can be. We're family, Francesca. But Diana comes first. Remember that. Francesca fled. Isabella followed with stiff dignity. When they were finally alone, Diana collapsed against Silvio, shaking with adrenaline. That was terrifying, she said. That was necessary. He held her tight. No more games, no more politics, just us. Real and complicated and probably still dangerous, but us. What about our arrangement, the 6 months? To hell with the arrangement. He pulled back to look at her. Stay with me because you want to. Stay because I love you and you love me, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. Your family will never fully accept me. Some will. Others won't. But you know what? I don't care. You make me happy, Diana. You make me human. That's worth more than their approval. He kissed her forehead. So what do you say? Will you stay? For real this time? Diana thought about everything that had happened since Christmas Eve. The terror and the beauty. The danger and the safety. The way Silvio looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that mattered. She thought about walking away, starting fresh somewhere safe, anonymous, and lonely. Then she thought about staying with this complicated, dangerous man who loved her anyway. Yes, she said, I'll stay. Not because of money, arrangements, or protection, but because I love you and I can't imagine being anywhere else. Thank God. He kissed her deeply, and this time there was nothing fake about it, nothing performed or calculated. Just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and decided to hold on despite everything telling them to let go. When they finally pulled apart, Diana smiled. So I guess I'm really engaged to a Mafia boss now. You guessed correctly. He took her hand, and she realized he'd slipped a ring onto her finger. A simple band with a single perfect emerald. This is real, Diana. Not for show, not for 6 months. Forever, if you'll have me. Forever, she agreed and meant it. 3 months later, Diana stood in the garden of the Rossetti estate, surrounded by flowers that had bloomed early because Silvio had paid someone to make it happen. She wore a white dress that made her feel like a princess, and Emma stood beside her as maid of honor, still slightly awed by the entire situation. "You're really doing this," Emma whispered. "Marrying a mafia boss." "I'm marrying the man I love," Diana corrected. "Who happens to be a mafia boss. There's a difference." "Is there, though?" Diana laughed. "Probably not. But I'm happy, Emma. Happier than I've ever been. Even with all the complications." And she was. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind, integrating into Silvio's world, learning to navigate family politics, building relationships with the members of his organization who'd accepted her. It wasn't perfect. Isabella still barely spoke to her, and Francesca had left the state entirely. But Uncle Leo had become a friend, Marco treated her like family, and Lucia had evolved from assistant to confidant. Most importantly, she had Silvio. Honest, complicated, dangerous Silvio, who woke her with coffee every morning and held her through nightmares and looked at her like she was the center of his universe. The music started, and Diana walked down the makeshift aisle to where Silvio waited. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like something from a movie, and when his eyes met hers, everything else faded. "Hi," she whispered when she reached him. "Hi," he whispered back. "You look like a dream. You look like trouble. I am trouble, but I'm your trouble now." The ceremony was brief. Neither of them wanted pageantry, promises. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss your bride," Silvio pulled Diana close and kissed her like they were the only two people in existence. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love you too. Even though you're impossible and dangerous and your family is insane. Our family now, you're stuck with them. I'm stuck with you. That's all that matters." They turned to face their guests, a strange mix of Diana's small world and Silvio's vast empire. And as they walked back down the aisle together, Diana thought about Christmas Eve, when she'd stood in a doorway holding a platter of antipasti, terrified and out of place. Silvio had ordered her to sit with him, and in doing so, he'd changed her entire life. "What are you thinking?" Silvio asked as they posed for photos. "That I'm glad I took the catering job that night. That I'm glad you noticed me. That I'm glad I was brave enough to say yes to all of this." She squeezed his hand. Even though it was insane. The best things usually are. He kissed her temple. "Thank you for taking the risk, Diana. For staying when you could have run. For loving me despite everything. Thank you for seeing me, for making me feel like I mattered." She turned to face him fully. "For pulling me into your world and never letting go." "Never," he promised. "You're mine now, for better or worse. In sickness and in health. Till death do us part, which in your line of work could be any day." He laughed, and it was real, warm, and perfect. "Then let's make every day count." And they did. Life wasn't easy. There were threats to navigate, family politics to manage, and the constant danger that came with loving someone in Silvio's position. But Diana had never felt more alive, more seen, more loved than she did as Silvio Rossetti's wife. She'd gone from invisible to invaluable, from struggling to secure, from alone to absolutely irrevocably claimed by the most powerful man in New York. All because he'd looked at her across a Christmas dinner table and said 2 words that changed everything. "Sit with me." And she had. And in doing so, she'd found not just safety, security, or financial stability. She'd found home.